I'm Rosi Reed, and I'm the Development and Training Coordinator for Making Families Count. I develop new ideas for MFC, which are mostly about raising our profile generally and coming up with different ideas for the training we run. I also liaise with the various organisations who contact us to ask about our training, and I work with them to ensure that we deliver what they need. I didn't see it as patient safety when I first got involved. I saw a problem that needed addressing. In 2014, Julie Kerry was then working for NHS England as the Assistant Director of Nursing Patient Experience and South of England Mental Health Homicide Lead. And she was working then with Julian Hendy, who was a bereaved family member who had founded the advocacy charity 100 Families. And together, they set up a new type of training organisation in which the trainers were all bereaved family members who had lost loved ones in the care of the NHS. Their idea was that the organisation would use the stories of their members as training tools for healthcare professionals. They had been successful in obtaining funding from NHS England, who were going to fund this as a pilot project, and they were looking for suitable family members to join them. Julie heard me being interviewed on the radio where I was talking about the experience I'd had around my son's death. And then she was present when I was addressing a meeting, also talking about my own experience. And based on what she heard me say then, she thought I'd be suitable to join the fledgling MFC. At this point, I'd never heard the expression patient safety. And to be honest, initially, I was just coming to terms with delivering presentations to large groups of strangers, talking about what had happened to me and getting to grips with all that. But I quickly saw how and why positive engagement with patients and their families could be a real game changer for patient safety. We are now a far larger organisation than we were when we began. We currently have 15 members, some of whom are directors, some are paid, and some are voluntary. Some of our members are current or ex-senior NHS professionals, but most of our members are still, just as we were at the beginning, family members who've lost loved ones in traumatic circumstances while they are in the care of the NHS, or they are the family members and the people who killed their loved ones were being cared for by the NHS. Some of our members' lives have been touched by suicide or by domestic homicide, by mental health homicide, and some by poor, substandard, or negligent care. And it's important to understand that because that's very much what is still at the heart of our training. We continue to make family members sharing their own stories absolutely central to our training. I think of it as lifting the curtain and letting delegates peek behind. Even the most senior member doesn't always have the opportunity to listen to a family's story directly from them. And there's enormous power in hearing someone's real experience directly from them. At least for the time that they're speaking, we will take you on a journey and you will have to step into our shoes. As I often say, there really is no us and them. Every healthcare professional will at some point be a patient or the family member of a patient, and every professional is a family member. Some of our most traumatized family members that I've met are also healthcare professionals. For example, 2 weeks ago, we had a guest speaker for one of our webinars, and she is a senior matron who has had to deal with knowing that she could not get the staff at her own hospital to listen and engage with her when her father deteriorated quite suddenly in their care. She did her absolute best, but they gaslighted her, they sidelined her, and then her father died. Only later did it become clear that he had probably had some type of fall, which had not been recorded on his medical notes. The aim of our training is to help staff deliver healthcare in the best way possible for them to feel confident and capable of empathy and support when dealing with patients and their families. Yes, we share stories which illustrate what poor care looks like and what good care looks like, but all our training is about giving you the tools that you need to engage with families well. It's all about the what, the why, and the how of positive family engagement so that people leave our training feeling empowered and positive. There's so much about my role, which is deeply fulfilling. First and foremost, though, it's the people I get to meet and work with, amazing people, both family members and also many healthcare professionals that I meet through my work. The most amazing, dedicated, caring, and insightful people. I love that no working day is like another. And when I sit down at my desk in the morning, I have no idea what email will come pinging through and set me off on the road to work with a new organization in a new way. And I also think I'm incredibly lucky. Bereaved people often talk about wanting to make a legacy for the person they've lost. And there's no doubt that the death of your child is a particularly painful, awful thing. I don't see my work as Nico's legacy. I think he would actually much rather I brought out a banging dance track, which was played all over the world, as his legacy. But I do see how simply breathtaking it is that I've had the opportunity to turn my family's pain and a horrible experience into something worthwhile, which helps others. It's now my job. And that's a gift that I'm ever thankful for. There's no doubt that the ever pressing pressures of lack of time, lack of money, and resources are massive challenges. The NHS are basically bleeding out highly experienced staff who simply can't take the pressure anymore and are leaving in high numbers, which is made worse by the amount of staff who've returned to their countries of origins following Brexit. The NHS are struggling to recruit because the wages aren't good enough and the pressure is ever mounting. And this combo of lack of time, lack of money, lack of resources means that constantly the coat is having to be cut to fit the cloth, but the amount of cloth is steadily shrinking. Positive family engagement and working well with the families of patients is starting to be seen ever so slightly as a luxury add-on, which can be managed at a push without. But the truth is, of course, so much additional trauma and lengthy, drawn-out legal battles could be avoided if the family was engaged really well with and supported from day one. So it's actually not a luxury. It's a way of adding the amount of cloth that you've got to cut the daily coat from. And I think the other big challenge is what I call the two R's: reputation and regulation. The fear of reputational damage and of getting into trouble with the regulators causes organizations and senior management to make some truly terrible decisions. As soon as you put the two R's ahead of patient safety and positive family engagement, it's going to have a profoundly negative effect on patient safety. It's also causing patients and their families to lose trust in the services and the NHS. For MFC, I see us delivering more and more training, not only to different types of NHS trusts, but to private healthcare providers too. I think we're going to be spending more time speaking about our work, giving presentations about our work to different organizations. I can also see that some of the things that we were talking about and recommending back in 2014 are actually happening now. So we used to talk all the time about FLOs, family engagement officers, about the need to have them in the NHS. And I can see that family engagement and patient safety in general has now got a far higher profile. And family experts are starting to be seen as actual experts, particularly in the subject of their loved ones. So what else are we getting up to? Well, we've got Life Beyond the Cubicle, which is our mental health project, co-funded by NHS England, and which we've done in co-production with Oxfordshire Health NHS Foundation Trust. And this project is all about educating and updating staff on the importance of involving families wherever possible, particularly during mental health crises, to improve patient care, to reduce harm and reduce deaths. And then also over the last 18 months, we've been working in co-production with 9 different NHS trusts, mostly around the south of England, pretty much all over really. And we've produced a handbook, which we call Compassionate Communication, Meaningful Engagement, which is basically the go-to document that tells you how do you do patient and family engagement from start to finish with, and it covers all sorts of things like family liaison officers, like duty of candor, like working with families, report writing. We put into it everything we thought would be useful. And they are kind of flying out, really. I would say that I probably send about 20 of them out a week. And then also, a little bit excited about this one, next year, we're planning to have our first ever Making Families Count annual conference. Watch this space on that one. I found this quite a hard question to answer. So I'm going to ask if I could change 2 things. So number 1, I would ask healthcare investigators to stop talking about the fact that they are very careful to take down the professionals' evidence and also the family's stories. There's way too many organizations who seem to say that statement with pride. When you completely undermine the idea of parity between professionals, their patients, and the patients' families by deciding that the one has evidence, but the other only has stories, then there's no way that the system is a level playing field where families are actually seen as experts in the subject of their own family members and loved ones. Truthfully, it's not enough to stop using the word story, when surely what they mean is evidence. It's also about the people saying it understanding why it's not acceptable and why it's the opposite of useful. And then my quick second thing is, could I also ask that the healthcare system starts to get better at sharing learning between trusts, between organizations, and then embedding it better to bring about permanent change after a serious incident or a serious complaint? Well, when I'm not doing my job, I actually spend a lot of time either as a patient or as a family member. The end of 2022, I had a heart attack. My partner rushed me down to our local A&E where they kept me in for observation. Good job they did, because 2 hours later, I had a heart arrest and died. It's been a long journey back to health, and I've spent a lot of that journey as a patient and thinking about what patient safety is like when you're a very, very poorly patient with drips and wires coming in and out all over the place and unable to do the things that you took for granted. You're suddenly incredibly vulnerable. And without the ability to speak for yourself or someone to speak for you, it can be very frightening. For the last 2 years, I've also been my husband's assistant. He refuses to call me his carer, so I'm his assistant. And it's a great job. But sometimes we have trying times. His illness and his medication means that sometimes he finds it hard to remember things and to say exactly what he wants to. So I go with him to all his appointments and I basically act as his advocate. And again, spending so much time in hospitals and with various healthcare professionals makes me see very clearly what patient safety means for them on a day-to-day basis and means for their patients and means for families. Okay, so I think there's probably so much about me that would surprise you, but I've tried to just keep it to one thing. When I was a teenager, I lived on the streets and found all kinds of unusual ways of surviving, including singing on the night buses for tips and offering my services to tourists as a tour guide around London street markets.